How does the old saying go? When people show you who they are, believe them. Well, this week, after the Gorton and Denton by-election, Keir Starmer once again showed us exactly who he is. By now, like a lot of us, you will have enjoyed watching Hannah Spencer, an actual normal human being, win that by-election for the Green Party. Enjoyed to a degree, anyway. On the one hand, there's little to celebrate in witnessing the demise of the Labour Party, a once proud institution that stood for socialist egalitarian values and for the working class. To see it brought down so low by the stubborn incompetence and value-void vandalism of the android at the top is a genuine cause for sadness. Still, on the other, watching Spencer handily beat both the racist fucksacks of reform and the bloodless technocratic spreadsheetism of the Keir Starmer project was unquestionably delightful, and it really added to the joy of my first cup of tea on Friday morning. The response to her victory from the losing reform candidate, Matt Goodwin, well, make that mad bad loss, was exactly what you'd expect from the representative of a frothing bunch of retrograde fuckwits, claiming that he hadn't been beaten by progressives, but that progressives had been told how to vote, and that a coalition of Islamists and woke progressives had come together to dominate the constituency. Wow, I wonder how he managed to alienate those guys before the election so that they didn't give him their vote. We'll just have to put it down to one of those unanswerable mysteries. And then, semi-sentient frog's ass Nigel Farage later added to Reform's poor loser vibe by contacting the Greater Manchester Police and the Electoral Commission with allegations of family voting. And here's me thinking Reform were all about family values. Go figure. Revolting as all that is, it's only what you'd expect from the party of pound-shot Proud Boys and dickheads. Somehow managing to be worse than that, not least because we're all supposed to expect so much more from him, was the response from Mr. Decency magazine's Man of the Year, Keir Starmer. That's Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, or what people still insist on calling the Labour Party, an actual prime fucking minister of Great Britain. Jesus Christ, has there ever been a more willfully blinkered, arrogant android piece of shit sitting in number 10? In a typically weird move, Starmer addressed the results of the by-election not to the public, but to his own MPs in a fucking letter in which he accused the Greens of embracing a divisive sectarian form of politics. He said that the people of Gorton and Denton, until this week a Labour stronghold, let's not forget, had chosen a representative who is more interested in dividing people than uniting them. That's an interesting take from Colonel Island of Strangers. Anyway, he went on, the Greens were able to capitalise on an endorsement from George Galloway, a side that the Greens are not the harmless environmentalists that they pretend to be, and that their position on legalising all drugs shows us how unstable their electoral coalition is. What? Well, you know what, I suppose he'll try to have them prescribed as a terrorist organisation next week. It wouldn't be the first time. He blathers on a little bit more before rounding off with this reminder. We will continue to warn of the risk the Greens pose. The Greens. Not Reform. We will continue to warn of the risk the Greens pose, the risk of extreme policies like legalising all drugs. He's obsessed with legalising drugs. And pulling out of NATO, which most voters strongly reject. Yeah, if anyone knows what most voters want, it's Keir Starmer, the man who refuses to budge, even though most voters very clearly want him to fuck off. These green ideas, he droned on, ran the risk of splitting the progressive vote so that reform come through the middle. The absolute bare-faced cheek of the man. Not an iota of recognition that if anyone were to blame for splitting the progressive vote, it was him. A man who turned Labour from a party of progressive values into a centre-right nightmare of nationalist rhetoric and the empty, meaningless technocratic wonk-speak that has done so much to make people despise politicians and distrust politics to the point where Reform needn't worry about trying to come up through the middle since Keir Starmer has built them their own fucking road. He turned his back on the party's base and like a fucking moron tried to woo the Reform crowd, a move that has worked absolutely nowhere in the world when it comes to seeing off the rise of the far right. Because why would any nationalist knuckle-dragger opt for fascism light when they could have full-blooded, authentic fascist venom pumped directly into their veins instead? Starmer turned Labour into a party that embraced cruel immigration policies, revelled in deportation videos, a party that became complicit in the genocide of Palestinians, supplying arms components to Israel and jailing protesters in the UK as terrorists by introducing a law that let them call them that. He turned Labour into a party that stands for fuck all. He is the reason that the party has hemorrhaged almost all of its support. He is the reason why progressives flocked to Hannah Spencer in Gorton and Denton and will flock elsewhere when it comes to the elections in May. Because Keir Starmer has turned Labour into a party that is no longer a home for progressives. And the reason he's having such a go at the Greens is because a glimmer of a fact has managed, against all the odds, to push its way past the firewall surrounding the moral vacuum of his core processing unit. That fact is that it turns out progressives do have a place they can go. The idea that they would, when push came to shove, stick with Labour as the only viable option for their values has been exploded, and the sham of Starmerism has been exposed for the wet, pointless shit pit that it is. Progressives do have a home, and it's increasingly looking like the Greens, which explains Labour's increasing attacks on Polanski and his party. But it's no good telling Starmer that he's the one that pushed the progressive vote elsewhere, because of course, as far as the Cal 9000 is concerned, none of this is his fault. He's not to blame for the loss of Gorton and Denton. It's the stupid voters opting for the extremism of Hannah Spencer. Yeah, good luck trying to convince the public that Hannah Spencer is an extremist. It's fucking pathetic. Fuck. You know, it's amazing. Every day, I find that I despise Keir Starmer even more. I mean, I honestly thought I was all hated out. But I'll give him this. He has inspired me to push deeper and uncover compressed layers of contempt that I never knew were even there. I must be hitting the genetic equivalent of fossil fuels of bile with every robotic utterance that dribbles from his puckered anus of a mouth. Starmer has, of course, vowed to fight on, which I fully support since, as we all know, he's incapable of keeping a promise. He said, "I will keep fighting for the people for as long as I've got breath in my body." The sneaky little shit. Everybody knows androids don't have breath in their bodies.